let's remember and put it in perspective. Sadly, the former mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, ruined the city of Atlanta, and particularly the Atlanta Police Department. They still have to, thanks to her, they still have to do retention and recruitment. It could take another year or two while we're up to strength. That's the problem. Our response times are lousy. We could go on and on. The courts have to get tougher, and I think that no cash, no bail is wrong. The city council ought to repeal that because there's too many repeat offenders out there on the street.
Darren.
I would say this, I spent a lot of time talking to the mayor all throughout the year, and whether it was affordable housing, dealing with the issue of homelessness, infrastructure, he's had some big wins. I mean, you look at the things that he's been able to do. We stopped the Buckhead City movement, but public safety has been the preeminent issue throughout his first year. So now going into this new year in 2023, you look at what he's done about dealing with the issue of crime. We can't have a conversation without talking about funding. And so there's no more important budget item in this new budget than putting more money to not only give cops the money they deserve, but make sure that we're investing in the technology, cameras, and everything. What we've seen is that the rest are up. They're arresting people, right? But as Phil said, they arrest them, they go to the courts, and then they're let back out. But I think also I will call on the community to continue to do what we should be doing to try to protect ourselves. We now got to know that you cannot be as sort of lax and when you're out and about. Even myself, I'm a little bit more aware of my surroundings now. But yes, the randomization of these crimes that happened in 2022, particularly at the end of the year, definitely really shook the city in a way that we've never seen. But I have the utmost faith in the chief. I think the city council members are holding this administration accountable. The administration is welcoming that input. So ultimately, hopefully when we sit here a year from now, that we will see that the crime has actually gone down, particularly with homicide.
And we see Mayor Andre Dickens out. He's out on the streets. He's talking to people. Melita, we saw the issue of a Buckhead City die pretty quickly during the legislative session this past year. Will we see any movements this year given the high number of murders?
I don't think so. The Buckhead City forces they just really don't have concrete plans for how this would be implemented. And the proponents of this movement point to Sandy Springs and Brookhaven as examples of what they want without mentioning that those two cities were created from unincorporated territory. What they're trying to do, carving a city from existing and long established boundaries, has never been done, and it would set a horrible precedent, not just in this state, but in other places as well. So I just think that movement kind of resembles the Shakespearean phrase, a tale told by idiots full of sound and fury signifying nothing.
Ooh, Janelle.
There's Representative-elect George Santos and his resume, and the lie after lie after lie that comes out. And while we've seen some try to make comparisons between him and other elected officials, the difference here is we know where those elected officials went to college. We know what they did in their previous career. With George Santos, we don't even know if that's his real name.
Interesting point. Charlie
Just to be clear, though, Joe Biden got hounded out of one of his presidential campaigns for lying, for making up stuff about his biography.
Sure, but there's a big difference, Charlie, between that and sort of saying that you worked at Goldman Sachs and you didn't.
I don't know how those lies are somehow worse than the lies that Joe Biden continues to tell today.
Or that your mother was a survivor of 9/11.
In his own administration.
Or that you had employees that worked at the Pulse nightclub. That's not true. I mean, the lies just keep coming with Representative-elect George Santos. That's not the same.
Had you ever even heard of George Santos before all this came up?
We got to point out he even lied about his own religion and his religious heritage. We got to leave that there for a second. Catherine, what is it going to be?
Officer did suffer a skull fracture and a large cut to his head. And over in Alabama, one person was killed in a New Year's Eve shooting in downtown Mobile. Police say they got a shots fired call just blocks from where crowds were celebrating the city's New Year's celebration. At least 9 people were hurt in the shooting and were taken to nearby hospitals. It's unclear the extent of their injuries. No arrests have been made, and it's unclear what motivated the shooting. Looking internationally now, Ukraine reportedly fired 6 rockets to strike a facility in the eastern Donetsk region where Russian forces were stationed. Russia's defense ministry claims that 63 Russian soldiers were killed at the strike. The Ukrainian military has not directly confirmed the strike, but tactically acknowledged it. A branch of Ukraine's armed forces claims instead that 400 mobilized Russian soldiers were killed in a vocational school building in the Donetsk region, and about 300 more were wounded. Meanwhile, Russia deployed multiple exploding drones in another nighttime attack on Ukraine as the Kremlin signaled no let-up in using bombardments to target energy infrastructure. The barrage was the latest in a series of relentless year-end attacks, including one that killed 3 civilians on New Year's Eve. Let's take a look over at Vatican City, where Pope Benedict XVI's body is lying in state in St. Peter's Basilica, as thousands of people lined up to pay their respects. The 95-year-old Benedict died Saturday morning in the Vatican monastery, where he had lived since his retirement in 2013. Public viewing lasts for 10 hours today in St. Peter's Basilica. 12 hours of viewing are scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday before Thursday morning, after its unannounced launch triggered a brief public scare of a suspected UFO appearance or a North Korea missile launch. The launch was part of the ministry's efforts to build a space-based surveillance capability and bolster its defense posture. It didn't notify the general public of the launch in advance because it involved sensitive military security issues. Australia and Canada have joined a growing list of countries requiring travelers from China to take a COVID-19 test prior to boarding their flight. Australian health authorities said that from January 5th, all travelers from mainland China, Hong Kong, or Macau will need to show a negative COVID-19 test taken within 2 days of their departure. Canadian authorities announced similar measures that will also come into effect on January 5th. Australia and Canada joined other countries, including the U.S., UK, India, Japan, and several European nations in imposing tougher COVID-19 measures on Chinese travelers.
Stuff inside Atlanta City Hall among the elected officials, those disagreements are discussed behind closed doors. Not this time. It's brought wide open, out in the open, and we've talked to the principals involved.
That I will faithfully discharge the duties of President of the City Council of Atlanta, Georgia. Of the City Council of Atlanta, Georgia.
It was a cold inauguration day a year ago. 1 year later, there is a different temperature inside Atlanta City Hall, and Doug Shipman is feeling political heat.
He is asking black women to take a back seat in the name of equity.
Andrea Boone, a council member, did not get reappointed by Shipman to lead one of 7 committees that shape the city laws that Atlanta residents must abide by.
And what we cannot do is be dismissive of black women.
And Marcy Collier Overstreet was removed from her leadership post as well. The 2 women, proud native Atlantans, went public with their concerns, citing that for some 4 decades, a black woman had held a leadership role inside City Hall.
And there is a place at the table for black women in Atlanta. So for the first time, there is no black female in position at all.
I was surprised by their concerns because they hadn't brought them to me. These were not intended flights. This is not about any particular member. It's about trying to make sure that it's balanced.
The council president, Shipman, rebuts the notion that he is disenfranchising black women in leadership roles. He says because he has other appointments to boards and such, and he's already appointed some black women to those boards.
This evening, someone called 911 and reported flames coming from the 2nd and 3rd floor of this 3-story apartment building. Now, we're told that by the time fire officials got here, the apartment was fully engulfed in flames. A bystander let them know that the person was trapped inside the building, so that then became the focus. Crews had some difficulties getting inside because of burglar sticks that were designed to keep people out, so they had to force the doors open. Once they got there, they say they found the woman dead, and the smoke got to her.
It's a sad situation. We never want anybody to lose their life. But as far as our response, and we still come in and try to save as many people as we can. Unfortunately, by the time someone reported the fire and when we got there, it was too far gone.
Several agencies here on scene tonight. The Atlanta Fire Department, Sandy Springs Fire Department. It looks like some fire officials from Buckhead are here, all responding to this. We're still working to learn more details about the victim, but they did say they believe she's an elderly woman, and she did have a cat that they believe also perished in the fire. We'll have more details on this coming up. We're live in Buckhead tonight. Joy Dukes, Fox 5 News.
People he pointed the gun at. She told me he didn't say a word, just raised the gun and pointed.
It was terrifying when you have kids and someone points a gun at you.
Neighbors on David Lane in Mableton are scared. They say they saw a man walking up and down this road on New Year's Day looking into cars and carrying a gun.
We walked outside and to see what was going on, and he cocked the gun and pointed it at us like he was about to shoot.
Police were called and say when they pulled up, they saw 35-year-old Jose Razo in the carport with a gun. Investigators say officers ordered him to drop his weapon. Police say that's when Razo pointed the gun in the direction of law enforcement, and an officer shot Razo. Police say Razo was hit in the shoulder and ran into the home. Investigators say he refused to come out, so the SWAT team was called in.
20 to 30 cop cars, 2 SWAT trucks, and 2 armored vehicles come up onto a house.
They tried to convince Razo to come out peacefully.
He just barricaded himself inside of his house.
They did a flashbang, and then they had the SWAT truck had something on the front of it, and they broke down the front door.
After several hours, Razo surrendered. He was taken to the hospital for treatment and booked into the county jail. Again, no officers were hurt. The GBI will conduct an independent investigation of the officer-involved shooting. In Cobb County, Denise Dillon, Fox 5 News.
Police say the shooting stemmed from a social media fight. Atlanta police have arrested a 26-year-old man in connection with the shooting death of an off-duty Fulton County Sheriff's deputy. Police say they caught Alton Oliver Monday afternoon at work. Officers say Oliver did not know Deputy James Thomas Jr. Authorities say Oliver shot Thomas while he was driving on Bolton Road on December 29th. Police credit good police work, modern technology, and help from the public with the arrest.
It shows the work of citizens, the 911 caller, some truck drivers that had dash cam videos, and just the technology that the city of Atlanta has to lead to investigations and success like this.
Oliver is charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, and firearm possession.
New details of the deadly shooting of a Clayton County teen. Officers were called to a home on Windermere Way in Jonesboro around 2 this afternoon. That's where they found 18-year-old Quentin Morris dead from a gunshot wound. Shortly after, police were able to track down the suspect, 17-year-old Malik Moses. He was taken into custody on a number of charges, including murder and aggravated assault. Authorities have not said what led up to the shooting. With gun violence plaguing so many metro Atlanta communities, officials are taking a new approach to try and curb the violence. Atlanta City Council has approved a new plan to give out free lock boxes to residents. Now Atlanta police will work with Mayor Andre Dickens to come up with a plan to get these lock boxes into the hands of gun owners. We will have reaction from the council member spearheading the effort tonight on News Edge at 11.
Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin remains in critical condition tonight. His uncle says he improved to 50% oxygen on a ventilator, down from 100%, so there's progress. Hamlin's heart stopped after a hit during the NFL's Monday Night Football game last night against the Bengals. The stadium came to a standstill after Hamlin collapsed. Medics performed CPR on the field for some 10 minutes. Health officials say that quick response likely saved his life, and tonight, he's still in the hospital.
Destinations include Chicago and New York. Both cities are known for very cold winters. New York Mayor Eric Adams warned last month that his city's shelters are at capacity. In response to Colorado's plan, he said, "This is just unfair for local governments to have to take on this national obligation." In his words, "There's no more room at the inn." Democrats have widely criticized Republican governors like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott for the same action. A cruise ship rescuing migrants of the coast of Cuba, and not just one, but 2 separate cruise ships spotted boats on Monday. One was overcrowded with 19 people, the other was a raft with 5 people. In both cases, crew members contacted the U.S. Coast Guard, who took the people from Cuba into custody. Celebrity Beyond Captain Kate McHugh posted a video of the rescue on social media. In the video, she said that she turned the ship around after her chief officer noticed a glimmer on the horizon. It turned out to be the migrant boat. After the migrants were aboard the ship, crew members provided them with blankets, fresh clothes, food, and a medical evaluation. Officials say hundreds of people have tried to illegally cross into the Florida Keys over the past several days. Most are from Cuba and Haiti and are escaping economic turmoil, food shortages, and inflation. Mexican authorities said on Tuesday they fired the director of a prison near the U.S. border. That's where at least 30 inmates escaped over the weekend after a deadly riot. Police are now hunting for missing convicts.
Mexico has flown 200 military personnel to the U.S. border city of Ciudad Juarez to fight organized crime there, days after a deadly prison riot and while a manhunt is underway for escaped convicts. That's according to the Defense Ministry on Tuesday. That's hours after the director of the prison, which saw guards and prisoners killed in a riot and breakout on New Year's Day, was fired. Chihuahua state prosecutors said Tuesday Alejandro Alvarado was not only dismissed, but he and others are under investigation for a possible role in the jailbreak. 19 people died on Sunday after gunmen attacked the prison a few miles south of the U.S. border. They killed guards and inmates and triggered a mass escape that included cartel kingpin Ernesto Alfredo Pinon de la Cruz, also known as El Neto. After federal authorities arrived to restore order, they found a so-called VIP zone in the prison full of drugs and cash. On Monday night, the Chihuahua state government said 7 people had died during subsequent police clashes as part of a hunt to find the escaped inmates. 2 of the dead were police. Sunday's events mark one of the highest death tolls from prison violence in Mexico in recent memory.
Also new tonight, Atlanta police have released the 911 calls made moments after a 9-year-old boy was struck and killed in front of a recreation center. We do want to warn you, these calls might be hard to listen to.
Atlanta 911, operator 6180. What is the location of your emergency?
Roselle Play, recreation center. A man just hit a baby. I don't know if the baby living or not, ma'am. And there's so much traffic out here. I'm up here now about it, baby. I'm up here now. The baby ain't moving or naked.
Police were called to the Roselle Fan Rec Center on Cleveland Avenue just after 6:30 last night. Investigators have not released a description of the suspect's car. Police have identified the victim as Jamal Dean. If you have any information about this, you're asked to call police.
Jury selection city.
The message came after someone claimed to set fire to an Oregon bank as an act of solidarity with recently arrested demonstrators here in Georgia. Fox 5's Christopher King has the latest.
Governor Kemp calls the arrested activists domestic terrorists, but protesters say they are demonstrators peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. The message unmistakable. Governor Brian Kemp tweeting he expects more arrests after the GBI charged 6 activists with domestic terrorism in a protest over a planned training center for first responders.
He's definitely trying to intimidate protesters.
The governor posted the message on Tuesday. This after an anonymous activist claimed to set fire to a bank in Portland, Oregon in solidarity with the arrested protesters.
This is a further attempt to criminalize the movement to stop Cop City.
Kamau Franklin is the founder of Community Builders Movement, a grassroots group opposing what they call Cop City.
Trying to criminalize the movement, trying to change the narrative.
Last month, the GBI charged 6 protesters with domestic terrorism, accusing them of hurling rocks at police and attacking EMTs at Fire Station 10 nearby.
It's a fraudulent charge.
The governor says the people arrested are part of, quote, a broader network of militant activists committing similar acts of domestic terrorism across the country.
They're demonstrators who are peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights, without a doubt.
The park has been at the center of a hostage standoff between police and protesters. Police allege various types of criminal activity, including carjacking and arson in the woods. Activists call Wilani.
If they're breaking the law, you should be arrested for that. But if you're doing it peacefully or within the parameters that are allowed, then yes, I would say they should be able to do it.
Jorge Welker Reyes lives nearby. He says he would like to see a compromise.
Somebody from the government and the protesters get together, find out what they want, and, do some negotiation.
Governor Kemp says anyone committing illegal acts in protest connected to this site will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. In DeKalb County, Christopher King, Fox 5 News.
It lets individuals petition a court to take firearms from a person they believe poses a threat to themselves or others. It took effect in 2019 and has led to more than 1,900 removal orders, but the judge said it violates the U.S. Constitution's 2nd and 14th Amendments. According to the ruling, non-medical workers, such as police officers, shouldn't be authorized to determine if a person is psychologically likely to cause serious harm. He also said the law doesn't fit under the nation's tradition of regulating firearms. A person familiar with the case said the ruling has limits and doesn't strike the law down statewide. The mastermind behind the most publicized college admissions scam in recent memory will go to prison. William Rick Singer was sentenced to 3.5 years by a federal judge in Boston. The scams he orchestrated got widespread media attention in 2019 because they involved famous parents like Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin. They also involved standardized test cheating and bribing university coaches and came to be known as Operation Varsity Blues. More than 50 people involved have been charged. Huffman and Loughlin were both sentenced to short prison terms of just a few days. Prosecutors asked for 6 years behind bars for Singer, as well as $19 million in fines. His attorneys wanted probation with home detention. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including racketeering, money laundering, and obstruction of justice.
Takeoff was shot outside a bowling alley in downtown Houston. Police say he was an innocent bystander to an argument over a dice game. Well, jury selection is underway in the high-profile trial of Atlanta rapper Young Thug and more than a dozen of his alleged associates. Young Thug, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams, is facing RICO charges in Fulton County. He's accused of being the ringleader of the gang Young Slime Life. 200 prospective jurors were summoned to the courthouse yesterday, and another 200 potential jurors were set to report to the courthouse today and tomorrow.
New developments tonight for the Decatur High School educator caught openly using a racial slur during class. Fox 5's Brittany Edney is tracking the developments and has obtained a letter the superintendent sent to students. Brittany joins us now live from outside the school. Brittany, what did this letter reveal?
Well, the letter shows that the teacher at the center of this incident, Mr. John Chestnut, that he, after having that brief suspension for the December 7th incident, is now working in a completely different role outside of the high school while a third party investigates the incident. Another new development that we learned today through that letter is that the same goes for the principal. Decatur High School students are back in the classroom after a holiday break. Students say they returned to faculty changes and this letter from the superintendent of city schools of Decatur showing new action against the teacher who openly used a racial slur in the classroom. It announces, quote, Mr. Chestnut will be on an alternative assignment outside the high school during the evaluation period. This video from December 16th shows Principal Rochelle Lofstrand talking to students after they organized a walkout. The letter also announces the same change to her position and explains steps being taken by the district, saying, quote, the third-party consultant will evaluate the response of the school and district, review processes and procedures, and conduct restorative
out of control. They say the video shows Tremaine Denson make a run for it, but he would be tackled by a deputy and arrested. Hairston, they say, surrendered. Here's the shocking discovery. Wedged into the small back seat of the Charger, deputies say they found 5 children, Hairston's children, ages 4, 5, 9, 11, and 12. None of them buckled, they say. Deputies say Gloris Hairston, the mom, is facing serious felony charges, aggravated assault, hit and run, fleeing and attempting to to elude child safety seat violations, child cruelty, as well as drug charges. The passenger, Tremaine Denson, is also facing drug and weapon charges, as well as the charges that he was wanted for out of Fulton County in Los Angeles. The children, they were unhurt and were turned over to a relative. In Coweta County, Doug Evans, Fox 5 News.
New at 6, Atlanta police arrested a man they say tried to steal more than $22,000 in merchandise. Take a look at this surveillance video. Officers responded to a silent alarm at Saks Fifth Avenue on Peachtree Road in Buckhead. A security guard told police a man was seen walking around the store, taking items and putting them in a suitcase. Officers say they found the suspect, Zavari Royale, in the shoe stockroom.
Hands. Get down. Get down. Get down. Get down. Get down.
Police say Royale entered the store through an emergency exit door. They recovered $22,000 in high-end items.
Time for another look at Skyfox traffic in the evening rush hour. We're checking back on the downtown connect.
Details some of the DNA that was found at the scene on a knife holder laying next to victim Madison Mogan's body, and that DNA matches Kohberger's. Police tracked the suspect's movements up until his arrest in his home state of Pennsylvania on December 30th. Turns out Kohberger changed his license plate and car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington State 5 days after the quadruple homicide. Phone records show he was in the area of the victim's home at least 12 times prior to the killings, and most were late at night or in the early morning. Kohberger's phone service was off during the killings, which police believe happened between 4 and 4:25 a.m. Now, this timeline is interesting because we're also learning that one of the victims, Zaina Kernodle, had a food order delivered at 4 a.m. According to the affidavit, one of the surviving roommates saw the suspect and stood there in shock. He apparently left, exiting through the back sliding glass door. And the roommate's physical description of the male is similar to Kohberger's, although she didn't immediately recognize him. And she heard crying from Kernodle's room and a male voice saying, quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." That's according to the affidavit. And this morning was Kohberger's first court appearance in Idaho since he was extradited from Pennsylvania yesterday.
And again, the maximum penalty for this offense, if you plead guilty or found guilty, is up to death and imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
And Mr. Kohberger, would you like to represent yourself, hire a lawyer, or see if you qualify for court-appointed counsel?
I have court-appointed counsel.
Investigators still haven't found the knife used in the killings, and Kohberger's next court date is January 12th. In Moscow, Idaho, Ashley Soriano, Fox 5 News.
Ashley, thank you.
The industry, it seems like. Federal prosecutors have seized U.S. bank accounts at Silvergate that are affiliated with FTX Digital Markets. Several U.S. lawmakers have questioned the relationship between Silvergate and the FTX founders' crypto firms. Some have requested information on the bank's anti-money laundering compliance program. Silvergate CEO Alan Lane said the bank absolutely follows all requirements on reporting suspicious activity. And on Wall Street, main indexes closed more than 1% lower today. The Dow fell 340 points or 1%, S&P lost 45 points or 1 2/10%, NASDAQ dropped 154 points or 1.5%.